We're back today with a new recipe for this halal cart style chicken and rice meal prep. Pair it with some vegetables, lettuce, and a white sauce to go over the top. This is a buffet style prep where all the ingredients are stored separately for more flexibility over what goes into your daily meals. Then you can make bowls of various sizes like this one here, which has about 642 calories and 43 grams of protein. Now follow along for how to make it for yourself. To start off, we can marinate our chicken. Into a large bowl, add 2.5 tablespoons or 37.5 grams of oil, 2 tablespoons or 30 grams of lemon juice, 2 teaspoons or 6 grams each of cumin, garlic powder, onion powder, and smoked paprika, 1 teaspoon or 3 grams of cinnamon, 1.5 teaspoons or 9 grams of salt, and 1 teaspoon or 3 grams of black pepper. Stir everything together to mix the seasonings with the oil and lemon juice, and then add in 3 pounds or 1.36 kilograms of boneless, skinless chicken thighs. Toss the chicken around in the marinade with your hands so that every bit of the surface is completely covered. I'm going to allow this to marinate in the fridge for about 30 minutes so that those flavors can penetrate the meat even further. Letting it go even longer would be better, but if you don't want to wait at all, you can just cook it off right away. While that was marinating, I began working on my rice. Into a large bowl, I weighed out 2 cups or 360 grams of basmati rice. Rinse this under cold water until the water runs clear to remove all the starch from the exterior. Then place your rice pot over medium heat and add in 2 tablespoons or 28 grams of butter. Once it has melted a bit, you can pour in your rice and stir everything together to coat each piece of rice with the butter. Allow this to go over the heat for about 5 to 7 minutes, stirring frequently until it starts to brown and smell toasty. For this style of meal, I find it best to have individually separated grains of rice instead of having them stick together. Rinsing the starch off the rice, toasting it in the butter, and how much water we will use later all help to achieve this goal. Once your rice has developed a bit of color, we can add in the seasonings to toast those as well. Add in 1 teaspoon or 3 grams each of garlic powder and onion powder, 1/2 teaspoon or 1.5 grams of cumin, 1/4 teaspoon or 1 gram of turmeric, and 1/2 teaspoon or 3 grams of salt. Stir this around to coat the rice with the seasonings and allow them to bloom for about a minute over the heat. You don't want these spices to burn because they'll become bitter, so make sure you stir frequently and have your water ready to be added. For this amount of rice to achieve our individual grains, we're going to use 3 cups or 720 grams of water. Bring the pot to a full rolling boil, then you can place on a tight fitting lid, reduce the heat to the lowest setting, and allow this to cook on a simmer covered for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, you can remove it from the heat and leave covered for an additional 10. Now to cook the chicken, you have 2 main options. You can throw it in the oven, or you can do what I did and put it on the grill. I realize a lot of you guys probably don't have a grill handy, so if you need to use the oven, what you're going to do is place the chicken thighs onto a parchment-lined sheet pan and throw them in the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit or 204 Celsius for about 20 to 22 minutes. For some extra color, you can turn your oven to broil for the last 5 minutes of cook time. Just keep a watchful eye on them so you don't burn them. Seeing as how it's summer here over in the land of the free and the home of the brave, I'm going to use my grill to cook this chicken. I turned the burners to medium-high, allowed the grill to heat up, and then laid on my chicken thighs. I'm going to grill these chicken thighs for about 4 to 5 minutes on each side, or until they're cooked throughout and well colored. Once all that chicken was done cooking, I pulled it off and let it rest for a few minutes before cutting into it. If you want to multitask while your chicken is cooking, you can chop up all the vegetables to add to your meals. Start with 1 large English cucumber or 300 grams worth, and I like to take a vegetable peeler to remove some of the skin just to make for a softer bite. This gets cut into thin quarter circle slices. The English cucumber is preferred here because it's less watery on the inside. Next, you'll chop up about 3 Roma tomatoes or 300 grams worth into a large dice to match the size of your cucumber pieces. Cut out all the goo and seeds from the insides because it's too wet and it will make everything soggy. Next is 1 small red onion or 100 grams worth, and this gets cut into thin slices. To help take away some of that raw onion bite and flavor, you can rinse these pieces under cold water for about 30 to 60 seconds. Once you've got everything chopped up, it's ready to be packed away for storage. For this buffet style prep, I want my food to stay fresh for as long as possible in the fridge. The cucumbers, tomatoes, and onions all get added to the bowl, and that gets followed up with 1 tablespoon or 15 grams of olive oil, and about 2 tablespoons or 30 grams of vinegar. I find it's best to not salt the vegetables at this point because doing so will pull out the water and make everything inside soggy. Zwilling, the sponsor of today's video, recently added some glass bowls to their line of fresh and safe containers, so I'm going to be using one of those to store these vegetables. With these fresh and safe containers, I can pop on the lid and then use the vacuum pump to remove all the air from the inside. This gives me a marvelous airtight seal and helps the food stay fresh for longer in the fridge. These glass fresh and safe containers are great for buffet style meal prepping. When I store things in my fridge, I'll reach for these containers, and when it's time to put stuff into Snack City in my freezer, I use their fresh and safe vacuum bags. Zwilling is offering TMPM Nation a deal on their 7-piece fresh and safe vacuum starter set, where if you use the code MEALPREP at checkout, you'll get 10 extra medium bags for free. There's a link down below in the description for you to get your hands on your own set. Thanks to Zwilling for sponsoring this video. Up next, I worked on my lettuce. Here I've got a half a pound or 227 grams of green leaf lettuce. I rinsed and washed the leaves, I picked through the pile and threw away any of the ones that made me feel funny to look at, and then I cut them into very thin pieces. I stacked up the leaves on top of each other and rolled them tightly, and then cut them as thin as I possibly could. Thin is the way to go here because it keeps things more manageable and easier to eat. Can you think of anything worse than having to bite down on a gigantic chunk of lettuce? I don't think I can. All that lettuce got transferred over into a fresh and safe container. This one is called the fridge box, and then I removed the air with the vacuum pump. I can move on to my rice now. That's been sitting on the stove ready to go for a while. After it is cooked and rested, pull off the lid and give it a fluff to make sure everything looks right. Keep in mind that the idea here is to have individually separated grains of rice and not rice that sticks together. This is achieved mainly in the cooking process like we discussed earlier, but if your rice still looks a touch wet at this point, sometimes just leaving it on the counter with the lid off can help some of this excess water to evaporate. Once the rice had cooled down a bit, I grabbed another fresh and safe container. This one is a large one called a gratin dish, and I added in my rice. For reference, my total yield of cooked rice was 1,080 grams. Moving right along, the chicken has been resting, the juices are locked in, and I can slice this up now. I cut each thigh into thin slices and then each of those slices into bite-sized chunks. Thin slices on this chicken rather than a large dice will help it to reheat faster in the microwave. The faster it can reheat, the less of a chance you have of nuking the chicken to a crisp, drying it out, and getting that weird reheated chicken flavor. It goes into another fresh and safe container just like all of our other ingredients, and for reference, I yielded 950 grams total of this cooked chicken. Now lastly, we can make our white sauce. Place a bowl over a scale and add in about a half a cup or 100 grams of mayonnaise, about 2/3 of a cup or 150 grams of plain non-fat Greek yogurt, 1 teaspoon or 5 grams of lemon juice, about 1 teaspoon or 3 grams of garlic powder, and then a pinch of salt to taste. Mix everything together to incorporate your ingredients and see what consistency you are left with. We're going to want to thin this out with a bit of water. I ended up using 2 tablespoons or 30 grams. You want this to be pourable so that you can add it on top of your bowls. Also, if you want a lower fat version, you can play around with the ratio of mayo to yogurt. I think it goes without saying the more mayo you use, the better it's going to taste, but you can also try out a low fat version of mayonnaise. And once you finish your sauce, you should now have all of your ingredients prepared for your meals throughout the week. When mealtime comes knocking, you can pull all the containers from your fridge and build your bowl based on what you want for that day. That's the main advantage of buffet style prepping. You can change the contents or the size of each of your meals instead of being locked into what you put in your regular meal prep containers. For these bowls, you'll start with the rice and the chicken because that's what's going to go into the microwave. I've got about 180 grams of rice here and 126 grams of the cooked chicken. That goes into the microwave for about 60 seconds or just until it's hot. We don't want to overcook it. Next, I gave a big stir to the bowl with my vegetables, and I added a couple scoops of them to my bowl with the rice and the chicken. I ended up using 108 grams of these vegetables, and I also grabbed a heavy pinch of the lettuce to add as well. Remember that when we were preparing these vegetables, we did not salt them so that they would not release too much water, so at this point, you're going to want to add a little bit of salt to them to season. To finish off, you can drizzle over some of your white sauce. If it has thickened up in the fridge, just add a little bit of water and stir to loosen it up. This amount right here in the bowl is 28 grams, or right around 2 tablespoons. Then you can lid and re-vacuum all of your fresh and safe containers and throw them back in the fridge. This particular bowl is going to have about 642 calories with 43 grams of protein. On the recipe page on my website, for the nutritional estimates, I have it divided out into 6 servings. That's obviously if you split all these ingredients evenly into your 6 meals. I'll also put on the website the per gram values for each of these ingredients so that you can then multiply by how much you put into each one of your dishes. It won't be perfect because your yields for cooked chicken and cooked rice will likely be slightly different than mine, but it should be close enough. The full written version of this recipe for how you can make this halal cart style chicken and rice is published on my website mealprepmanual.com, and that is linked down below in the description. You can change up the protein or the vegetables to whatever you prefer for this one, and just store it the same way in the fridge. The first time I tested this recipe, I made it with lamb, and it was spectacular. So if you're looking for a change of pace from your traditional style of meal prep, give this one a shot. If you want some more meal prep recipe videos, check out the ones on screen now. Goodbye.